Library Board Leadership, Stories of Impact, Purpose, and Community. Welcome to this recorded information session on Library Board Leadership. In this video, you will hear from current Library Board members about their experiences serving the community, learn about the value of diverse and inclusive governance, and discover how your voice, perspective, and leadership can help shape the future of the library and community as we look ahead to the 2027-2030 Library Board term.
My name is Sandra Sydor. I'm the CEO of the East Gwillimbury Public Library. Welcome to Library Board Leadership, Stories of Impact, Purpose, and Community. Today we're going to be hearing some fascinating stories, and I'd like to call upon Christine Glenn, our chair of the Library Board, to start us off with introductions and have a chance to just expand a little on what we're going to be learning today.
Thank you for everyone who's attending. Bindigen, hello. My name is Christine Glenn, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of the East Gwillimbury Public Library Board. Let's adjust this a bit. We are delighted that you have chosen to spend part of your day with us for this important conversation about library board leadership, stories of impact, purpose, and community. Public libraries are among the most trusted and valued institutions in our communities. They are places of learning, connection, creativity, and belonging. Behind every successful public library, there is a dedicated board that provides governance, strategic direction, and stewardship on behalf of the community. Today, this event is designed to provide a firsthand look at what it means to serve as a library board trustee. You'll hear from current board members who will share their personal journeys, what inspires them to get involved, the impact of their service, and the rewards and opportunities that come with board leadership. Thank you to Diana Robichaud, who's here as our past chair, Kayla Crone, our current vice chair, Lars Opalinsky, our current board member, and Srihari Karu, also a current board member, for being here and sharing your experiences. You'll also get to hear from Shannon G., the town's Accessibility, Indigeneity, and Equity Coordinator, who will speak about the importance of diverse and inclusive leadership in governance and why representation matters in shaping services that reflect our entire community. Whether you're simply curious about board service, considering applying for the upcoming 27 to 30 library board team, or looking for ways to become more involved in your community, we hope today's discussions will be informative, inspiring, and engaging. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin by hearing from Diana Robichaud, who will be sharing her story and experience on serving on the board.
Thank you very much, Christine. I think I'll start with why I chose the library board as a place to volunteer in our community. I grew up in a rural community that the library was my favorite place to attend and visit. Books were not age appropriate at the time, and it was too portable shoved together, and that was after it was renovated and updated, and it's shared at the location with the local OPP station. So as well, after that, growing up, my grandmother was a member at the Georgina Library and used to work there. So I would love to visit her in that space and see what a real library looked like and watch her as she got to shelf books, but also do children's programming. So that enticed me to get more involved in our local library. But over the years, my reasons for staying on the board changed. The changing landscape of libraries as a whole, funding that hasn't kept up, being able to advocate for what we needed and why governance was needed. And I wanted to be a part of ensuring that these special places can exist for others in the future.
Hello, I'm Kayla Crone, and I became part of the library almost 8 years ago. This is my first board/committee that I had ever been a part of, and at the time, I was 24 years old, and I was the youngest member of the board. I wanted to be part of the board because I saw an opportunity to use my skills as an early childhood educator and a resource consultant to be able to support the board with all of their programming and things that they were doing. Over the past 8 years, we have designed the library space that we're currently sitting in, hired CEOs. We have put in countless hours to make sure that our town has wonderful spaces in which you can access for our different libraries. 4 years ago, I was voted to be the vice chair of the board, and that's been a fantastic experience. Opening our new library branch has been the best highlight of my journey on the board, and I continue to look forward to creating better opportunities for our committee and our community.
Felix qui potuit rerum cognoscere casus. No, I didn't just have a stroke, I hope. That's a Latin phrase attributed to the Roman poet Virgil, which translates to English as, happy is the person who has been able to learn the reasons for things. It was my high school's motto, which embodied its historical commitment to classical studies, lifelong curiosity, and intellectual growth. So one of the things I still carry with me from those days, thanks to Mrs. Wilson, my grade 10 Latin teacher. As Father's Day approaches, I'm reminded that my father didn't get to finish high school. He left home for Canada by himself at a very young age due to the war, and he was always envious of the opportunities we have here for lifelong learning, especially younger generations. And he often thought that many of us take the opportunity to learn for granted, which he always reminded me of. However, he later rekindled his lifelong learning journey with a particular interest in history and languages. So when I became a father, the importance of lifelong learning had already been instilled in me. My father's journey showed me that learning can be done at one's own pace, and in different places. The library is a perfect resource and environment for that. For many without advantages, it fills in a gap for being able to continue to learn. When she was little, my daughter and I spent a lot of time at the library. It was always a safe, accessible, friendly place to go to take a virtual journey through the pages of her soon-to-be favorite stories. When she reached her preteen years, I noticed a lot of her classmates, including those that were struggling in school, were getting dropped off at the mall on a regular basis. Now, I appreciate the allure of taking selfies with frappuccinos at the mall with your BFFs as much as any tween girl. But I couldn't help but wonder, what if just sometimes, instead of dropping them off at the mall, they were taken to the library? With all the resources available there, would the result be more likely to be positive or negative? I decided that the library, with all of its programs and resources, is too important for our kids' future to be overlooked. And I wanted to have some input in its direction, as well as to always be in the know of library issues. So 4 years ago, I applied to be a board trustee. The time commitment has not been overly demanding, which was important as I was balancing a career, hobbies, family commitments, and at the time, I was co-chair of my daughter's elementary school council as well. I've learned a lot about board procedures here, and during my tenure, I have found the board to uphold the highest standards of professionalism. Our strength is we all bring different qualities and experiences to the board, and while we may not always agree, it has always been with complete respect. And I'm happy to say I've made friends on this board who I otherwise would not have met. So if you have some time, do consider applying to be a board trustee or get involved with other library groups, such as the Friends of the Library, who also do wonderful things in our community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Srihari Karu. I am one of the board members currently in the current term. And as a child, I grew up in a community where I have no access to libraries. I am a first immigrant from Sri Lanka, a country that had 30 years of civil war. And one day, I believe maybe I may have been 5 years or maybe even 6 years old. One morning, my parents informed the only public library that we had in the entire province, that's Jaffna Library, was burned down the night before. It was burnt down just to kill and also demolish and erase a race. What better way can you bring a race down? By restricting their access to education, literature, and their culture. That resonated so much in my childhood. I never knew what a public library was until my family migrated to Canada, and then I saw the firsthand of public library. What a safe space that was. Later, I was fortunate to be employed as a student, but also at my university library. I saw firsthand what a safe environment that could be for young children and for youth who are learning and also trying to find their identity as a teenager. It is a safe place where you can either make yourself as a teenager, or you can also become the country's best professionals and do so much for the country. That burning that library as a child, when I learned, that took down the entire Tamil literature, the history, the knowledge, and identity that we had. We are today also part of it, as we are celebrating the Indigenous awareness today. And similarly, Canada experienced that. So for me, it's not about where or which country it is. Overall, libraries and education systems suffer if you want to suppress a community or a race. Having worked in the library and seeing how much it helped me, it deepened my appreciation how important libraries are. It's not just a building filled with books, but it is also a safe space for learning, growth, community, and opportunity for young children. That experience stayed with me through my life. And then when I moved to East Gwillimbury, what a beautiful small rural town, moving from Waterloo or from Toronto to this area, you had so much benefits for bigger libraries in the bigger cities, but a rural community didn't have that much. So I wanted to join the public board just to ensure that just like myself, future generations will always have access to knowledge, opportunities, and sense of belonging that libraries provide.
What is one story from your time on the board that captures why library governance matters?
Well, as I was saying, the library of my childhood was a building of books, and not books that were reflective of the ages and the people in the community. But through the years, while I've been on the board, Amazon has really taken off. So ebooks became more popular as well, and we had access to next day shipping. So libraries as a whole were being challenged to remain relevant. Communities already knew that they were relevant. Cardholders and usage didn't decline, but funding was frozen. So governments change, and it's hard to get buy-in for sustainable funding. And that's part of what the board's job is. We're a community hub, and that came from advocating to the region that we will support high-speed fiber connections to help get internet to the rural part of EG. And my best example of governance is hiring the CEO. The CEO sets the board's vision into action, and it builds the team to achieve its goals. There's nothing better than seeing your new hire succeed because it impacts all the staff and the community as a whole.
How does your own background shape the way you serve as a trustee?
Yes, thank you. I am a project manager and an IT service manager by profession. Bringing that project management where you are constantly planning and you're looking for with the limited budget that you have, how do you execute certain programs, certain projects or initiatives that we are trying to do for the community. I think that had brought value to bring to this board. And I think I have learned so much from the board as well, given the finances and the budget that we have, how can we best maximize the value that we provide for the community?
What community experiences help you connect with the library's mission?
So I would say most likely my job. I am a resource consultant, and so a lot of people don't know what that is. So I work with very young children from the time they're born up until they go to school with severe disabilities. So that could be Down syndrome, autism, deletion genes, a lot of medical needs that a lot of people haven't even heard of. And a lot of the time, these needs are met by communities, right? Going to a library, something that is completely inclusive. They have lots of books, they have lots of programming, to be able to be involved with their community, because not every child has that opportunity, especially if they're, maybe bound in a wheelchair, maybe if they, have G-tubes, whatever it is, and to come into a space to feel that inclusion is wonderful.
Yeah, I think it really hit home for me several years ago. One of my grandmothers is of Ukrainian descent, and so with the influx of refugees, I saw the tremendous benefit that the food pantry was having for people like that were, in dire need.
Can you share an example of a board decision that had a meaningful effect on the community?
I think I was chair or vice chair at the time, and I got a call at night from a Mount Albert resident. She was building a food pantry. She already had a location, the funding, donations were coming in. She already had volunteers set up, but really needed a bank account and didn't know what to do with all the money that was coming in. So we talked it out, and I brought in the CEO of the library, and we decided that putting the food pantry under the library brought some legitimacy and some combined services that we could all share, and a proper bank account. So it made that as people were visiting the food pantry, they would be able to get a library card, have a coffee, get access to the services that we have, use the computers. The food pantry's turned 10 this year, and it's grown in both what is provided to clients and the number of members that it serves.
What story best illustrates the library's role beyond books?
So two of my roles in life are as an entrepreneur as well as a parent. So some of the things that really impressed me about the library are, for example, the makerspace, as well as the meeting rooms, which are of enormous benefit to entrepreneurs, people who are maybe starting off on their own businesses, and could use some additional resources for that. As a parent, I was always amazed with the programs that the library has, such as helping out with homework, for example. It's very difficult as a parent to help your own kid out with homework. The dynamic just doesn't work out quite right. Sometimes you just don't know how to communicate as well. And so having that neutral third party, almost like a tutor, available to help your kid with homework, I think is something that's underutilized.
As Lars mentioned, when we migrated to Canada, we were in a one bedroom apartment. The libraries having that small rooms, or even when I was in university, that small rooms, a quiet space for you to study, do your homework, or even practice a play or music that you are practicing, where you have those small rooms, that helps better for me. Yeah.
Any questions that you want to pose to our wonderful panel?
I just really still really enjoyed it. So I'm excited with different perspectives and excited to see how I can maybe get involved. I really don't know what the process is. So I think some of my questions just involve what are the process, what is the process, and maybe am I well matched to join, or how does that all work?
In terms of how you join the board, or how the meetings and things go?
I guess all sorts of those things are interesting to me. So I guess it seems like there's positions that open up, or maybe there's an interview process or something.
Yeah, that's a good question, and everyone jump in if you have. But we start with is an application form that you can find on our website, and it also links to the town website. The terms are 4 years, so when it mirrors the term of council. So once the elections take place, the whoever is appointed by council or by the mayor's office will be the council liaisons, and then they will do interviews with everyone who has applied, and then they will select the board. And then we have a 4-year term. The chair is every 2 years right now. We elect a chair. and we have different subcommittees within so we have the regular board meetings and we have finance committee, a policy committee, an outreach committee. Am I missing? Yeah, compensation. Thank you. So those are the type of subcommittees that you could be involved in. We do some fundraising as well. But that's generally, we meet once a month, except in the summer. Does that kind of help? Yeah.
It just to highlight,
Yeah.
because we're by a new council, we're trying to encourage people to apply now, and then we'll try and stay in touch until the time of an interview. And we don't control when those interviews happen, but it won't be until after the fact. So, you know, if you don't hear anything back, it's going to take some time, and especially with the community council and orientations, there could be a bit of a delay to an appointment. But we just want to make sure those timelines are communicated and understood, because it won't be suddenly tomorrow. But all of our meetings are public meetings, so you're more than welcome to come to any of the meetings, and they're on the website as well. And we always appreciate having people come in and you can watch how a meeting happens and see if it's something you're interested in.
So I can watch a meeting that you guys have, but not in the summer. We don't meet it in the summer.
We don't meet in the summer.
But yes, from the rest of the year, absolutely public.
Monday night is our next meeting, and where are we, Queensville?
Yes.
Right here. And then the next one after that would be September, which is always a heavy meeting, because we don't meet in the summer, just as an example. But yeah, we're always welcome to have people come, and then you can ask questions afterwards as well, and say that we'll keep you informed and engaged throughout the process.
I don't have to stand. I really liked your part about the connection between, I mean, the food bank and then giving out library cards. That was been involved in a number of initiatives in the last 10 years, but that's one really I gotta take note of, and then maybe pass that on to other organizations. A couple of questions I have. When I left the teaching profession, we were having a really hard time with plagiarism, especially when it came to, I thought mostly grades 7 and 8. And one of the things that hit me was, so this is just at the part around 2016, 2018, when you could have access to anything online. And I discovered one basically, how do you get that across, not just to kids, but to parents? So I found that very, very hard, because in the community I was in Newmarket, they really didn't seem to want to listen to the concerns that we had as teachers about them going online. So the library board had any initiatives going on right now to help, especially young people, that, because I think when you get to grade 6, 7, 8, and they make that jump to high school, we're in that kind of quasi zone right now about how do we, so just kind of wondering if there are any initiatives or things that we do here at the Gwillimbury Library that address those kind of things.
So I'll give a board answer,
Okay.
which you probably won't like, and then Sandra can give a library answer. The board is here for governance.
I understand that.
Yes, so we can't dictate kind of what programs, but we can communicate and help feed from the community as to what are things that are important in the community. So we would hear something like that, and then through the strategic planning process, it gives kind of a blueprint to the CEO as to what are the things that we think should be addressed, or programs that might assist. And then the staff can kind of run with, we're hearing a lot about this area. So for example, the food pantry type of thing, and then connecting them with social services. I could bring that back to the board and say, we're really having a challenge with them being able, for people, the clients being able to access housing requests. But the actual operations, even though, and this is a struggle that we all have, it's like, we want you to do this and teach kids at this age, these skills. But that's kind of where we can stop. We don't actually develop the programming. But Sandra, is there anything currently going on with the library that addresses that area?
Yeah, and it's Jeremy, right? Yes. Well, Jeremy, in all honesty, there has been a lot of interest, most definitely in our library spaces being welcoming and inviting for kids. So first and foremost, We try to create an environment where teens feel welcome, and certainly this Queensville location has seen a huge population of teens coming in and accessing the space. When we're talking about plagiarism, and then plagiarism in light of AI and where that positions us, we have done due diligence to ensure that our staff are attending online workshops. We ourselves are, attempting, like all of society, to stay abreast of AI. And where does that kind of impact our learnings? And, kind of the traditional view lens of looking at plagiarism. I know when I was in university, it was very different. Now, what are we doing in terms of AI and accessing that as a tool, but acknowledging the use of that tool? Where does that start? And certainly I know from talking with my friends that are in education and more at the university and college level is being able to acknowledge it as a tool, having opportunities when we are, encouraging our youth to learn about that tool, because that is the future, right? So we don't want to negate it. We certainly don't want to say it shouldn't be utilized, but we want to be able to provide workshops on AI, but also workshops on creating your own story. And what does that look like when you're creating your own story from scratch and original thought, and ensuring that there's that human component too as well. So we're finding that balance and ensuring that our programming is well-rounded. So yes, we're offering up AI knowledge training, but we're also doing write-on and opportunities for teens to come together and to journal and to write and to create, or to work in our maker spaces and our creative studios where it is original thought, right? Where not everything we do is now vetted through AI. Like I would love to say hello to Christine, but not until I actually put my greeting through AI.
Yeah.
Where we can actually generate and talk and build on some of these conversation skills. I think all of us can acknowledge that youth today are struggling with some of these basic hello and how are you and great to meet you. And I'm sure you saw that in education.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Like you see today, post-COVID now, even talking to other people in other settings.
Yes.
How do they struggle to even have the basic conversation? Yeah. Can I say a couple ones?
Yes.
Absolutely.
One
Absolutely.
question I want to tie into the whole governance thing. I have 10 years of leadership in a educational union, and one thing I found very hard was I was given control over, elected chair of stewards committee. One thing I found was it was basically an old boys club. Who you knew got in, who you didn't know can be delegated. So it took me 4 years to actually change the entire structure implemented an EDI kind of format. And I got a lot of resistance, but I discovered at the end of it was that if we give people a chance, because when I left, it was elementary population was 84% women, 60% male. If you looked at all the positions within the group, it was totally the opposite switch. So I found it very hard, but when I went looking for help to say, how can I structure this? I was basically left to replace it. So what kind of things do you use? Because that's the question I wanted to ask the last speaker. What you have governance, but how do you teach governance to people who may not have ever seen governance before and have no idea, since it's dominated by particular groups?
Sorry, I keep speaking, but
Cool.
I was
Thank you.
hearing it too. No, we're registered, legislated by the Public Libraries Act.
Yeah.
So the governance is spelled out. So it gives you kind of that basic framework to follow. And then we have Robert's Rules of Order, which helps us learn how to properly do meetings. And we have to follow all with certain formats and making sure that everything is by the book. And then though, we are a library, and librarians love to learn and teach, and people that join the board are usually from that type of environment where you're constantly curious. So we have our partners of other libraries, and we connect with all of those boards. So we tend to learn together. The Northern 6 libraries, all of the boards get together when they first get appointed and learn together about governance and what it looks like and how to achieve it. And then we also have the annual library conference. and we can learn through that. And there's a lot. We have a website for boards, Ontario Library Public Library Boards, and there's a lot of teaching on there. So as long as somebody comes with the appetite to learn, there's a lot of resources. Or you can just come to the meetings and learn as you go. Like it's really open to what you want to get out of it and what you want to learn. So there's a lot of frameworks, there's a lot of teachings, there's a lot of times that we do the learning together. And then people that want to know more about a certain area can do that on their own as well. I'll say too, over the years, we've also struggled with those things, but trying to get more people interested in serving on the board. It's always been my personal feedback that we shouldn't live on the board. I've been here too long. We need fresh people that will speak for the community. It's been 16 years. It's too long. So, I mean, I could live here forever and ever and just keep doing it because now it feels a little bit more natural. But I think we need to keep welcoming new people and new ideas so that we keep advancing, so that we don't have a boys club, being little girls or these Gwillimbury, and trying to just get more diverse thoughts and viewpoints. So that's what we've always been moving towards.
I think all of you are fantastic. The stories I've heard today have just
When they
blown me away.
Even though we're talking about it is still out there. We are not there yet.
Yeah.
And I could, like, being a minority and also on the tips that Shannon, thank you. She had, I'm a visible minority and also an immigrant, but unless we practice it, we will not be breaking those barriers. And that's one of the reasons why I joined, because when I had experience that somewhere else, I want to break that EDI restrictions or having that barrier. Even as an immigrant, I could think, oh, maybe I don't belong it. And that Shannon covered that. Maybe it's not a place for me because I'm an immigrant or I am a minority. So just to break that, if you don't practice it and you live that through, we can have so many governance and structures and media policies and whatnot. But if you don't practice it, and this board has truly welcomed, I have never felt any other way than truly belonging to this board. So I think that practicing what we actually believe in is also, I think that's the first step than having any policies and governance. And any education, we can educate ourselves, but then not practicing it means nothing.
And it's being open to changing how things work too. Like, I'm very grateful through the time of COVID because it introduced us to more virtual opportunities. Everything used to be in person at set times a day. Now we have 2 meetings a year in the winter months that are designated as virtual. And that helps like a working person or a parent so much with juggling your time. The subcommittee meetings used to always only be in person. Now we can do those virtually. And again, like when my kid was young, trying to get home from work, pick them up from daycare, dinner on the table, and then leave right away for a library meeting, it was a lot. But if you can just sit down and open up your computer, like, yeah, go ahead and eat, I'll eat when I'm done. Like it allows more accessibility for other people to join. So sometimes it's felt like little steps, but when you look back, it's like, oh, we've come so far. And with the different people that we've welcomed up to the board, having more people interested has been a huge bonus.
And part of what we're doing here today with this recording, which is going to have me on for way too long, is we're trying to do a little bit more outreach to educate people about what we do, how we do it. So we're really, I think this board is putting their foot forward and saying, come and join us. And this is one of the ways that we're really trying to encourage people to come out and listen and see what we do.
If I can just speak to the library too as well, and we get such a diverse group of individuals coming into our library spaces, and so the board's been excellent in getting all of our promotional materials up and out really early. And even today along the boardwalk, we have a table set up there with information. I myself, if I notice regular patrons and you've spoken to always coming in with your family and it felt like natural next steps, I can think of individuals I've met here that are just adjacent to the Queensville Library. And one particular individual who is born and raised in what used to be Russia. And she's come in and shared her life experience and her desire for education for her daughter. That is her real goal. And so she's hungry for any new material we have in the library. And she's really wanting us to get going on chess for young children, chess for older adults and teens. And she's been really sparking that and bringing some of her ideas. And she's an individual that I reach out to and say, hey, we're coming to the end of the board. Have you thought about, making applications? So we too are always recruiting to ensure that it's not the same faces all of the time in the same circles and everyone who thinks the same way. And so you have that diversity. So our library team is working to support the board in really being the hands and feet out there to make sure that we're connecting people right across the Gwillimbury. I took Queensville as an example, but the same works into them.
Yeah. And then it all ties back to our council too. We need to be next council representation. And then the library board gets two of those councillors to sit on the board to help tie everything together. It's the only way I can say it off the top of my head. I need AI. So it's important when you develop those relationships with people that then serve on council, so you can help tie those requirements back together. And it's helpful when mayoral candidates and ward candidates are interested in attending these kinds of meetings, because if they get elected, they're the ones that choose who sits on the board. And you really want somebody that's engaged in library services. There's times where you might get somebody that's just there because they're appointed to the board, but you want those counselors to really be engaged and bring the board business forward. So we're having those good relationships with all of the elected officials, and that goes to MPs and MPP. Our funding comes from everywhere. So we have to always be looking to build more relationships and opportunities with elected members as well.
And I think I just want to touch back on something you said earlier in what the roles, and it was an adjustment for me when I joined, because I'm the person, I'm like, oh, that book needs, I'm going to go over and do that. Like, you get in and do, there is a clear line between the governance piece and what we're responsible for and the programming and the things that are executed by the library. And they're guided again by our strategic plan that we lay out as a board, and everything kind of comes from that. But we do take a step back in terms of making recommendations of, we should have this kind of program, we should have this on the, because we have staff that are the experts in how we build a collection appropriately, or how we build our maker spaces. So we do try to keep that line pretty clear, so that they're able to do the work that they do, and we just provide direction. Similar, we have a growth plan that we built out that kind of plants flags where we'd like to see new libraries. But again, going back to that partnership that Diana was talking about, you build good communication with your council, because they give us the most of the money that we have to spend, and be part of their planning, so that we are seen as part of the building broader community, and that we've got our flags planted along the way. So a lot of being on the board is really advocacy, out in the community, out with people in different levels of government. So, and the experts who know how to do the day-to-day stuff, we let them do that. So there is some pretty clear lines there that should be noted.
And we built like we said, flag planting, because sometimes you get very the details of those plans when you're writing them, but being able to see the execution of what it has meant when you look backwards to one was when we started the more of the tech services, because there wasn't a lot of internet accessibility in our rural communities. The library became the place with free Wi-Fi, and then as soon as COVID hit and everything had to change, a lot of the areas suffered not being able to pivot. But we were in such a perfect position to pivot quickly that it was like, you can get into the library, but if you park, we're going to give you some parking spots. You can park there and use our Wi-Fi. And we got expanded out to the town facilities as well. So you can't come in, but you can come and still use our Wi-Fi, download some books, because all of a sudden, all of our ebooks and audiobooks and the streaming service that you can use through your library card with a full digital branch that was just so ready to go, and it took off. So when you see those different plants, flags planted, and you look back and like, yeah, we were in the right position at the right time for a pandemic, I think. But that's what a lot of people have really featured on. And I think we're in the first area, like I think we were even teaching town employees, it's been as library stuff. But I mean, how to use virtual meeting platforms. And we had a weekly trivia thing that people had things to look forward to during a really dark time. And we did children's story time on Zoom. It was amazing. So the children's favorite librarians were, you could still see their face, you could still sit and read a book. So things like that really take off. And then we've had failures, and like they were my personal ones that I loved. We had little coffee machines in the lobbies, and because we're always like, well, parents should have a coffee and sit during the story time. And they would give out tokens for our board meetings so we could have a coffee. We don't have coffee machines anymore. But it served a purpose at the time. Right? And then it's like, okay, libraries have decided that this episode, we don't need to keep this going as more trouble than it's worth. We can just make them a coffee. Okay. But so like things that take off and then things that you're just like, yeah, Diana, that doesn't help. Okay.
Yeah, I'm blown away. That's truly amazing. It's been fantastic.
Well, obviously, if you have any other questions, please let me know. I think I have both of your emails. Do I have your email? No. Well, maybe I'll get that if you want more information. We've developed a package that gives a little bit more detail that we're sending out to anyone who applies to the board. So if you want to give me your email once we finalize the package, and I have yours already, so you'll get a copy of that package, and we'll send out regular just updates on what we're doing throughout the summer. If you want to drop by when we do a pop-up at the farmers market, or you want to attend a meeting, you can. I'll be sending out reminders so that you can stay in touch with us, and any information we'll be happy to share. Yeah, thank you both for coming and being here and part of this.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Everyone, my name is Shannon Giannitsopoulou. I use she, her, they, their, or per, pers pronouns. And I'm grateful to be here today with the EGPL, speaking about the importance of diversity in governance. So a little bit about my experiences in governance. I'm currently on the board of directors for a nonprofit called the Lighthouse for families and children who support those who've lost a loved one in the grieving process. I'm also Lighthouse's chair of their Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility, or IDEA committee. And I'm also on the board of directors for a nonprofit called the Red Nose Remedy, which provides therapeutic clowning services. So clowns go in and provide therapeutic services to folks who are sick in hospitals or other environments. And so my positionality, I have a lot of privilege in my identity. I am a white person. I'm first generation on my dad's side, but also a settler on this land. So in that way, I carry a lot of privilege with me as I enter spaces, including board spaces, but I'm also queer and genderqueer. And so I'm going to speak today a little bit about my experience and some of the wise practices I've followed in getting involved in governance. So the impact of nonprofits generally is huge. So including the work of the East Gwillimbury Public Library, they help to shape the fabric of our communities. They provide vital services and programming, and they also really influence public discourse through the kinds of messagings they share, through the kind of events that they have. And so I think they have huge impact on society. But when we think about who's on boards of directors and who's included and who tends to be missing, marginalized communities are generally often, as with most organizations, leadership positions are underrepresented on nonprofit boards across Canada, including in Ontario. And so this is a power wheel that considers marginalization and those closer to the center of power. And so when I'm talking about diversity of on boards, what I mean by diversity inclusion, I'm speaking specifically to the groups that are at the margins within our society as a result of forms of oppression like homophobia, sexism, racism, colonialism, classism, etc. And so it's when we think about why sometimes is there underrepresentation on boards, it's not, I've heard this working with nonprofits because I worked in the nonprofit sector for a long time. It's not because there's a lack of really qualified, brilliant folks that are part of these communities. It's because there's these forms of oppression at the individual, interpersonal level, and policy and procedure and structural levels form barriers to their participation. When I worked as a manager at YMCA Canada, I created the board diversification initiative. So recognizing how vital it is that that head office I was working from, but also the 37 member organizations across Canada as nonprofits and charities were diverse. So to intentionally identify and address those barriers. And so this project involved trainings and creating a toolkit for addressing that underrepresentation and encourage more diversity and inclusion. And so it specifically focused on groups such as Black, Indigenous, racialized folks, people with disabilities, to us LGBTQIA plus individuals and youth. So if we look at the stats, just pulling one example of statistics, this is specifically looking at Stats Canada from 2021, who's underrepresented on nonprofit and charity boards. And although in the Canadian population, 26.5% of folks are racialized, at the national, for nonprofits at the national level, Stats Canada still uses the outdated language of visible minorities, so that's why it's on the slide there, but it's underrepresented at 20.7%. And then when you get to the more local, regional, or provincial level, it's even lower at 9 to 10%. And it also, that survey also found that immigrants are underrepresented on boards. So in the Canadian population, they're 23%, but depending on the level of the nonprofit, between 12 and 18%. So underrepresented. And also Indigenous folks make up 5% of the Canadian population. But on boards 2 to 3.6, 2.1 to 3.6%. So we see a lot of underrepresentation. Also folks with disabilities, just 5 to 9%, which is a fair bit lower than the Canadian population. So why might someone from a marginalized community have an interest in joining a board? So what I found in my experience is that having diverse boards can ensure that the voices of marginalized groups are included in decision making. And of course, we want to be careful not to tokenize that one person I can't speak for the whole genderqueer community or the whole queer and trans community, but so the more folks that you have on boards from diverse backgrounds can bring in diverse thinking and also connection with organizations, connect organizations to those underserved or underrepresented communities. They can provide meaningful representation. So sometimes merely seeing someone that looks like you or is from your community in a position of power lets you know, oh, I could also be on a board one day. And maybe I also belong in this organization, also can access their services and feel included there. I benefited personally, so developing my own governance skill set and expanding my own network. And it's deeply rewarding, I found, as I think a lot of you shared, and getting to share your specific skills. You can identify and challenge forms of oppression that I mentioned earlier, like racism, homophobia, etc., that impact the community that you come from, and ultimately can really enable transformative change. And the EGPL is a great example of that, having such a fantastic equity and reconciliation lens. I won't talk too much longer, but some of the examples and how I've been able to help to guide governance at my the nonprofits I'm on the board of is, for example, something that seems a little neutral, but definitely has equity implications, determining staff benefit packages. Recently, I had the conversation with a nonprofit to consider how the staff benefits can include coverage for gender inclusive care for trans and non-binary folks, which has a huge impact on people's lives. Looking at our nonprofit skills matrices, including the nonprofits I'm on now, but I've seen many nonprofits where the skill matrices don't include, thinking about community engagement or equity and anti-racism. So being able to influence that, looking at language and ensuring that it's inclusive, even in the forms that we have, is there a box or ability for people to identify as trans or genderqueer, etc. And then also ensuring to implement training on 2S LGBTQIA+ inclusion, anti-racism, and anti-oppression. And so, of course, it's not merely someone's identity that has an impact on boards, but also their approach to the work. And so I think also recruiting across the board for board members who are supportive of inclusion generally is like goes hand in hand for sure. I'm going to skip over the barriers and just go to the tips. And really, these are more wise practices that I found helpful. And if you are from a marginalized community and maybe you are feeling a little intimidated or like not sure if you belong on the board or a board, you can reach out to a key contact and ask questions that may give you some more information to decide if you think that position is good for you. So does the board have an inclusion policy or commitment statement? And what are examples of that you've seen? You can look at their website or events or statements. What are examples of how you've seen that implemented meaningfully? What is their board's procedure for addressing mistreatment? How do you apply an equity-based approach to governance? How does the organization do that? Is there an orientation process or buddy system for new members? I think one of the boards I was on, they matched me with someone who had been there many years, who helped to check in after meetings to say, hey, how did that go for you? Are you okay? And I really appreciated that. And also asking, what are the expectations said or unsaid? I think often with boards can be sometimes assumed and sometimes true that there's a silent expectation. For example, even though our meetings are hybrid, you always got to be here in person, or we're going to, kind of be wondering why you're not here. Whereas that can create a lot of barriers if you have like a young a person who is doing a lot of family care or has transportation challenges. Is there an expectation for donations? That's often, I feel like, implicit. So you can ask some of those questions. You can also consider your relevant skill sets. Even if you don't have a specific degree, in community engagement, a lot of folks do a lot of, without the formal Western education, a lot of that kind of education and outreach work. And so you may have skills that you're not identifying that you have. Consider your interests and networks. So the two nonprofits I'm on the board of, I wouldn't necessarily have said, oh, I'm interested in like therapeutic clowning, right? But I had a background in doing equity work for in Oakville in their healthcare system. So because they're akin to social services and healthcare, that's where I found myself fitting in. So you can maybe think creatively or expansively about what your interests are and what networks you have that could help to support those organizations. Look out for board position postings. So sometimes if I really like an organization, I'll follow their newsletter, or you can even, sometimes reach out and ask. And just don't assume you need to know it all. And the boards that I'm on, we've had lots of governance training, and even those that have been there for 10 years, they learned something at the training. So it's not that you have to come in and know everything about being a board member and governance. You can learn along the way. So that's just wanting to give some wise practices and words of encouragement for those who might be watching this like today or the recording of how you might navigate some of those challenges.
Want to discover how you can make application for the 2027-2030 library board term? Please visit egpl.ca/about-your-library/library-board or scan the QR code on screen. Credits: CEO, East Gwillimbury Public Library, Sandra Sydor; Facilitator and Board Chair, Christine Glenn; Accessibility, Indigeneity, and Equity Coordinator, Town of East Gwillimbury, Shannon Giannitsopoulou; Panelist and Board Member, Diana Robichaud; Panelist and Board Vice Chair, Kayla Crone; Panelist and Board Member Lars Opalinsky, Panelist and Board Member Srihari Karu.